So you are very welcome to another episode of us reacting to stuff that you wanted to watch.
Well, that we want to watch, but you might find interesting
I
too.
meant you.
Oh yeah, me.
So what are we watching today then, you?
So we are watching Unsolved Mysteries That Have Been Solved.
Yeah, how about that?
Well, we watch stuff like this all the time. So
Yeah.
what?
What? I'm interrupting you, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm saying we watch stuff like this all the time, so we find it really interesting. So yeah, it was nice to find a video like this that we can share.
Yeah, we do be like 4 large pizzas in, like 40 minutes unsolved stuff.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
But this is stuff that's been solved.
Yeah, for a change.
Yeah. So.
Where they're biting the nails off ourselves watching this other stuff. We watch this anyway, like this is something we watch in our spare time, so it'll be fun to share with you.
Exactly, and we might know some of the cases on it as well, so maybe not, we don't know, we'll see.
If any of you know any of the cases before, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. So I think we'll jump over into this and get a look at the unsolved mysteries that have been solved. Right, you ready for this?
Yes.
Let's get into this.
Let's get going.
Unsolved mysteries that have finally been solved. Now this should be interesting. The McStay family.
On February 4th, 2010, Joseph McStay and his wife Summer and their little boys Gianni and Joey Jr. had packed up and disappeared from their home in San Diego. It seemed as they are on the run from people or a situation unknown. Police checked on their home and found no sign of foul play in the empty residence, only evidence of a family's everyday life. Paint cans in the kitchen that they were renovating, a carton of eggs on the counter, and 2 small bowls of popcorn in the living room. The family's 2 beloved dogs, Bear and Digger, were left behind in the backyard, and nearly $100,000 remained untouched in Joseph's bank accounts. He ran a successful decorative fountain business. The family's SUV was found in San Ysidro, California, and video surveillance showed a family matching the description of the McStays crossing the border to Mexico. But outside of that, the case grew cold, and no one knew what had happened to the family. On November 11, 2013, a motorcyclist found their remains in 2 shallow graves not far from Interstate 15 in San Bernardino County, more than 100 miles from the family's home. They also found a 3-pound sledgehammer that they believe was the murder weapon and clothing nearby, some of which had been marked with the same color paint the family had been using to paint their home when they went missing. On November 5, 2014, after an exhaustive search, California authorities arrested Joseph McStay's business associate Charles Chase Merritt in connection with the deaths of the McStay family after discovering that his DNA had been found on the steering wheel of the McStay's car. Prosecutors allege Merritt was a gambling addict who committed the crime for financial gain and wrote thousands in checks on Joseph's business account for days after he disappeared. He remains in jail without bond and will stand trial for the killings in early 2018. Number 9.
Pause up for
Yeah.
That's upsetting, especially when there's kids involved.
All that for financial gain, like.
You could have a gambling addict wanting to get a hold of money and he knows that his business partner has $100,000.
Yeah.
Just upsetting. I was like speechless watching these because
you don't know what to be thinking.
No.
Like, what does be going through anyone's head to even bring you to that point? Like, and that must have been scary because that's why you probably packed up because he knew.
I wonder how they found out it was him though. Oh, they just said it.
Yeah,
I just forgot about that degree.
Yeah, when you would when you see what's actually have to happen.
Yeah,
that's the whole family, like.
You have to kind of take a minute to process what you're just after hearing.
Yeah, rest in peace. Right, number 9. David Lee Niles. Let's go.
On October 11, 2006, 72-year-old David Lee Niles met with a friend in his favorite hangout, the Jake's Bar in Byron Township, Michigan, and suddenly left. It was the last time he was ever seen alive. Niles had been suffering from both cancer and depression, so his family had assumed he'd taken his own life, even putting out an obituary for him in 2011. On November 11, 2015, 9 years after his disappearance, a man who was decorating a tree for Christmas outside Cook Funeral Home in Byron Center was able to notice something on the pond while he was on a lift. He immediately notified police. When police arrived, they discovered a submerged car. Inside is a skeletal remain in the driver's seat and a wallet with identification ID card that belongs to David Lee Niles. Meanwhile, if one could have been really curious to find out what is submerged on that pond, Niles' body could have been found earlier after a photo taken by Google Map shows something is at the bottom of the pond.
Wow. Google Maps had a forced.
And they didn't even look. Again, that doesn't seem like it's solved. They just found him.
Well, they solved his disappearance.
Well, yeah, that's true.
They didn't like solve mentally what was going on or anything.
No. Well, I suppose after 9 years,
Yeah.
that'd be.
And
How did no one know it was 9 years?
Don't know. You wouldn't know what does be going on.
Well, I probably wouldn't have noticed it either, to be fair. So.
Well, if we were on the lift up and down, or if you were doing like Google Maps, like you wouldn't cop it straight away, would you?
No, because you could just think that's just rocks or something as well. So.
Yeah, you wouldn't think straight away, oh,
No.
that's a car with skeletal remains.
Well, no.
No,
I
that's
don't
not the
think
fourth
That would
thing.
be nice.
It's
You
not
look at
the-
it and be like, oh, it's a little fish.
Yeah, that's a
No,
cute
that's-
fish.
That's mad though, isn't it? 9 years, that's awful.
9 years, Jesus. It's poor family. Raina
Number
Marquand,
7.
Yep.
Right.
In 1999, the new owner of a house in Long Island discovered that a 55-gallon drum had been left outside the crawl space. When the drum was finally opened on September 2nd, everyone was shocked to find the mummified remains of a young woman inside. She was inside the drum for more than 30 years.
Oh.
She
What?
had been bludgeoned to death and was 9 months pregnant with a male
Oh.
fetus. There
Oh,
were also
no.
some personal objects inside the drum, including an address book. This helped police to identify the victim as Reina Angelica Moraquin. She was an immigrant from El Salvador who had moved to New York in 1966 and disappeared without explanation 3 years later. Investigators were able to determine that the drum had once been used by a Manhattan-based company called Melrose Plastics, where Moraquin had been employed prior to her disappearance. The company was owned by a man named Howard Elkins, who was also a previous owner of the house where the drum was discovered.
Oh.
Police used the address
Wow.
book to track down a former friend of Moraquin, who claimed that Moraquin had been having an affair with the married Elkins and became pregnant with his child. Moraquin had allegedly told Elkins' wife about the pregnancy and expressed fear that Elkins would kill her. Shortly thereafter, Moraquin vanished. When 70-year-old Elkins was questioned by police, he was told that he would be compelled by court order to take a DNA test to determine if he was the biological father of the unborn child.
Oh,
On
Jesus.
September 10th, Elkins committed suicide by shooting himself. A
Wow.
posthumous DNA test proved that Elkins was the child's father. Although it's extremely likely that Elkins murdered Moraquin, his suicide prevented the case from being solved conclusively.
Wow.
And there's one haunting final piece that the investigators was able to recover from Reina's address book. It was a small piece of paper that had been folded at the very back page, and it said, "Don't be mad, I told the truth."
Oh, that's upsetting.
That's awful.
Mummified in the drum though for 30 years.
While she was pregnant.
While she's pregnant, Jesus. 30 years in a drum.
I'm just speechless with that one. I don't really know what to say. That's just.
That's awful. Like,
How did no one find it in 30 years though? How did it just appear?
yeah, how did they just cop it down? Like,
Well, maybe that family moved.
yeah, and
They
just
could have
shut
been
it
there the
back
whole
up.
time, yeah.
Yeah, because it might be one of his properties that wasn't touched.
Yeah, because they did say it was his house. So,
Yeah. But he was a rich business owner,
well,
so he would have had like what, loads of properties just vacant.
well, yeah, that's true.
So there you go. That's awful.
Disgusting.
Number
The
6.
death of an
Anastasia.
that word.
On July 17, 1918, after 3 centuries, the Romanov ruling dynasty fell, ending in the chaos of violence and cruelty. The Russian Tsar Nicholas II, his wife Tsarina Alexandra, and their 5 children, Duchess Olga, Duchess Maria, Duchess Tatiana, Duchess Anastasia, and the young Tsarevich Alexei, were brutally executed by a firing squad in a basement in
Jesus.
Ekaterinburg. Because the bodies of the Tsar and his family were never found, rumors abounded that Anastasia, the youngest of the Tsar's daughters, might have somehow gotten away. 2 years later, in 1920, a mysterious woman jumped off a bridge in Berlin. Pulled from the Landwehr Canal by police officers after her failed suicide attempt, the unknown woman was soon brought to Daldorf Asylum with no papers in her pockets, no labels on her clothes, and a silent refusal to identify herself. She was given the name Anna Anderson. There she remained for 2 years. She said nothing at all for 6 months, though many took note of her aloof demeanor, the strange scars on her body, and the Russian accent that emerged when she did eventually speak. One day, a fellow inmate told the woman that she thought she resembled Grand Duchess Anastasia. The word began spreading, motivating former Romanov friends and servants to visit the woman and confirm her identity. The press fascination with the
That's
story of
terrifying.
Anna Anderson grew into a cult about Princess Anastasia. Eventually, she claimed to be the Grand Duchess Anastasia. When Anderson left the hospital, she was surrounded by a herd of supporters who validated her Romanov identity. On the other hand, the true Anastasia's relatives kept their distance. Matters grew heated when the relatives of the dead royal family fought legal claim upon the Romanov fortune in court. The turning point of this royal identity saga came with the evidence that was most certainly not in Anderson's favor. In 1927, a Berlin newspaper had run an investigation report that Anna Anderson's real name was Franziska Szkanskowska and that she was a Polish factory worker. Franziska was hurt in a factory explosion, after which she was declared missing. The timeline of this event coincided with Anderson's arrival in Berlin, and moreover, Franziska's brother Felix claimed that Anderson was his sister. Anderson refused all these claims, calmly repeating that she was Anastasia Romanov. Anderson died of pneumonia in 1984. 7 years later, in a forest near Ekaterinburg, 5 bodies were found and matched to the Romanovs. For a moment, it seemed as though the rumors were true. After all, the bodies of the young Alexei and Anastasia were missing. But 2 other sets of remains were found in the forest later on, and researchers believe these are the bodies of the 2 youngest children. Using a small sample of Anderson's intestine removed during a prior surgery and kept in a hospital for years, DNA testing done in the 1990s proved conclusively that she was unrelated to the Romanov family.
What do you think of that?
That was. What?
Throws herself off a bridge and claims to be someone else?
Yeah, like what? Well, clearly she's not well.
Yeah.
So,
That much is clear.
but I mean, you know, might as well try and be someone that's rich, I suppose.
Yeah. You know, if you're gonna identity thief, get yourself paid.
Probably would have gotten away with it as well if it wasn't for somebody just saying that.
Meddling kids.
What? What did you just say?
If it wasn't for them meddling kids.
Exactly.
Number 5.
The Chicago triple children. Oh no. That's awful.
On October 18, 1955, authorities discovered the naked bodies of Robert Bobby Peterson, age 13, and brothers John and Anton Schuessler, ages 13 and 11. Their eyes taped shut in Robinson Woods Forest Preserve. The boys had been kidnapped and asphyxiated. Bobby had been beaten over the head with a blunt object, and John's throat had been crushed. The events leading to their grisly murder began 2 days earlier, when they had gone downtown with $4 to see a Walt Disney documentary called The African Lion. Later, a bystander who was walking his girlfriend home saw the boys on the east side of Milwaukee Avenue, just south of Lawrence Avenue. One of the boys was standing at the curb, attempting to hitchhike a ride, and the other 2 were standing in the doorway of a nearby store, taking shelter from the rain. The bystander reported that 15 minutes later, after he dropped off his girlfriend, the 3 boys were gone. A massive police investigation ensued, but the case ultimately went cold, and the crime remained unsolved for nearly 40 years.
Wow.
In 1994,
40
however,
years.
during a federal investigation into the disappearance of Helen Voorhees Brock, the heiress to the Brock candy fortune, a witness cooperating with the government implicated Kenneth Hansen in the murder. 3 other informants later confirmed that Hansen had privately confessed to murdering the boys, based on the facts pieced together by state prosecutors. Kenneth Hansen, then 22 years old, picked up the boys and offered to show them the nearby Idle Hour stables, owned by Silas Jane, for whom he worked. At the stables, Hansen sexually molested at least one of the 3 boys, then strangled all 3 of them. Hansen was convicted of the murders in 2002 and sentenced to 200 to 300 years. He died on September 12, 2007 at the age of 74.
He was barely even in prison. That's horrendous.
Like, what?
40 years as well.
That's awful.
Why didn't the people that he confessed to come forward before that?
Yeah, that shouldn't have been alright to just have a
No.
general conversation. They should have went straight forward with that.
They should have been put in jail as well for what's it called? Misholding
Information.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Because
what. That's what it was basically.
Yeah, he did murder 3 kids, like, and then he told them, and they were like, get another pint.
Literally.
Yeah, like what the hell? So imagine how many people he actually killed in the 40 years he got away with.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to think about that.
No,
Since
absolutely
children
not.
were his target, that's awful.
But again, at least it's solved. Like, it does give them justice.
Yeah, in one sense
Yeah.
it does. Well, I hope the parents got justice out of it, because that's awful. So Pamela Jackson and Cheryl Miller.
In May 1971, 2 17-year-old girls, Cheryl Miller and Pamela Jackson, had planned to celebrate the end of the school year by gathering with classmates at a quarry along a gravel road, but they never showed up. Other teens just assumed they had changed plans. It soon became clear that the well-liked pair had vanished in their Studebaker. For 42 years, their families have waited and wondered what happened to their teenage daughters. Then, on September 23, 2013, someone spotted 2 tires sticking above the water in Brule Creek near Elk Point. The remains inside were those of Miller and Jackson. The evidence seemed frozen in time. A white license plate was clearly visible, as were the green registration numbers. A watch still had its strap and clearly showed the time it stopped, 10:20. Miller's purse was intact, containing her driver's license, coins, a couple of letters from friends, and other items, all in relatively good shape for being submerged for so long. Those belongings and DNA were used to identify the remains. There's no evidence the teens had been drinking, and mechanical tests on the car did not suggest any foul play. The car was in the highest gear, and the headlight switch on the dashboard showed the lights were on. One of the tires was damaged and the thread was thin. Autopsy reports indicate that there's no type of injury that would be consistent with or caused by foul play or inappropriate conduct. The bodies were found in the front seats as opposed to the back seat or trunk, and that their clothing did not appear to be missing. What's horrible about this case is that a man innocent of the crimes spent a decade in jail for the murders, all on a falsified confession from a jailhouse snitch. The snitch handed over a tape, allegedly of David Lycan admitting to killing the teenagers, but it didn't even sound like Lycan's voice. Lycan was released and is now filing a $400,000 lawsuit against the state.
Like, what happened there?
They got in a car accident, is what it seems, and then someone in prison was like, "Oh, it was him," just so they could get their
snitch rebel.
Well, no, they probably were told that if they gave names or whatever, that their sentence would be reduced.
Yeah, and clearly it wasn't. That's why they're still in there.
Oh well, yeah, especially after that.
Yeah.
He was in there for 10 years. Yeah.
Nearly 4 decades after a pregnant woman's body was found on a Wyoming ranch, prosecutors have connected her death to one of the California's most prolific serial killers, Rodney Alcala, otherwise known as the dating game killer, because he was a winning contestant on the ABC primetime game show during his reign of terror. Had been charged with the murder of 28-year-old Texas native Kristen Ruth Thornton, who was 6 months pregnant at the time of her death. Alcala met Thornton in San Antonio in August 1977, and then allegedly dumped her body on a ranch in Granger, Wyoming. She was strangled. Thornton was found in 1982, but her identity remained a mystery for more than 3 decades. She was finally identified in 2014 after DNA linked her to her sister. Her family recognized a photo of her that was one of several released by the Huntington Beach Police Department in 2010 after Alcala was sentenced to death. The photos were found in a Seattle storage locker owned by the killer. Investigators believe Alcala killed Thornton in Sweetwater Country based on a photo that shows her alive in what appears to be a remote public land northeast of Granger, a short distance from where her remains were found. Alcala, now 74, a former photographer convicted for a string of murders in California, remains at Corcoran State Prison and is sentenced to death. He is believed to have an estimated 50 to 130 victims, but the actual number is still unknown.
Jesus.
Number 2.
What's that say?
Caledonian Jane Doe.
On November 9th, 1979, a grisly discovery was made by a passing motorist in a cornfield 20 feet from Route 20, about half a mile from the intersection of Route 5 and Caledonia, New York. A young girl, 13 to 19 years old, was discovered. She had been shot twice with no evidence of being sexually assaulted. Police determined she had been shot in the head with a .38 caliber handgun, dragged into a cornfield, and then shot in the back. A waitress from a small diner in Lima, New York, remembered seeing the young girl with a white male described as being 5'8", 5'9", with black wire-rimmed glasses and a tan shirt. He was driving a tan station wagon with side paneling. Several truckers also called for information about the young girl trying to hitch rides with them to Boston on truck stops. Eventually, the girl named as the Caledonia Jane Doe was later laid to rest with no identification, no way of knowing who she was, let alone the killer. 35 years later, on January 26, 2015, the unknown identity of Caledonia Jane Doe would be solved. She had been identified as 16-year-old Tammy Jo Alexander. It is reported that on November 3, 1979, Tammy went missing from Brooksfield, Florida. She was last seen the day after her 16th birthday. Her case filed reads very little, besides the fact she was endangered missing and was believed to be a runaway. A missing person report was filed for Tammy by her high school friend. She hadn't heard from her in years and tried to track her down. When she did, she found out that Tammy had run away years ago and that her mother, who had a heavy drug addiction, hadn't even bothered to report her missing. The classmate reported her worries to the police, who soon realized that Tammy was a Caledonia Jane Doe. However, the search for Tammy's killer is still open and active.
That was awful. I didn't even report her missing.
That's upsetting.
It's very upsetting.
I think it's good that they eventually found out who she was.
Yeah.
At 16, like, that's so young.
Yeah, to be gone like that.
You hear that a lot though, of police just saying, like, oh, not as much now, maybe, but like back in like the 50s and 60s, that they just, if they were a certain age, they just class them as a runaway and just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, case closed. Like.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Hunch.
Yeah, Punch probably.
On 28 September 1995, the body of a teenage girl was found in New Britain, Connecticut. Shot in the head, she had been left in the doorway of a music store in the city's shopping area, wrapped in plastic bags and a sleeping bag. Just 1 week later, the body of a woman was found 40 miles away in Tulin State Forest in Massachusetts. She had also died from gunshot wounds. Both victims had no identification on them, and all efforts to identify them failed, leaving them nameless and their killer on the loose with little hope that justice would prevail. In January 2011, police released details that they believed the two bodies were mother and daughter, which had been established through forensic testing. This discovery prompted the question that their murders were linked and may have been carried out by the same killer. However, they still had no names for who they were. It was a surprise call to the New York State Police in 2014, which led to the breakthrough in this cold case and the arrest of 70-year-old Robert Honch. In June 2014, a relative contacted police to report that 53-year-old Marcia Honch and her 17-year-old daughter Elizabeth Honch were missing, and to voice their concerns that Marcia's husband and Elizabeth's father, Robert Honch, may have been responsible for their disappearance. They explained the family had been looking for the mother and daughter since they went missing in 1995. The caller told police that Robert Honch had told them that he, Marcia, and Elizabeth were moving to Australia to start a new life. In 1995, Robert Honch was living with his wife and teenage daughter in Brewster, New York. Although the couple had separated years earlier, they had recently rekindled their relationship and moved back in together. Little is currently known about Honch's immediate movements after his wife and daughter disappeared, but by the time of his arrest in 2014, he had married again and had 3 young children and was living in Dalton, Ohio under the name Robert Tyree. Robert Honch was arrested and charged with murder in both cases.
How would you live with yourself though, after doing that? Like killing your wife and child and then going and having another family?
Well, I wouldn't be able to answer that because I'd never think of doing that.
Well, that's a fair point.
So how would I use it? Oh, but that's an awful story. Just move somewhere.
Yeah,
None of
just carry on.
Yeah.
Well, again, at least, you know.
At least they were solved.
Yeah, justice was there for the majority of them anyway.
The majority of the victims had somewhat justice, which is always good to see. So what did you think of that? Above all,
it's kind of hard to say, isn't it? It's like it's like horrible what happened to everyone, but it's good that you know, the people that done it were found
Yeah.
and put in jail. Well, except that one person that was wrongly convicted and put in for 10 years.
Yeah, which was horrible. Hopefully he won against the state. But sure, look.
I hope so. Because however much money they're going to give him is not enough.
No, not for time.
No.
Like, money can't buy time.
Absolutely not. Especially not 10 years of your life.
No. Not any year in your life, period.
And regardless as well, you're going to have, you know, people look you up. It's going to be like, oh, you were in prison.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, you have that, like, splattered on you now.
Yeah.
That's awful.
What do you think of it all?
Definitely a really good, interesting perspective to see solved or something like justice for a change instead of unsolved.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Because there's
these-
a lot of unsolved stuff out there.
Yeah, like stories like this, it's good to let you know like what's going on in the world. Like it's not all black and white. Like there is a lot in depth in behind the scenes going on. But the perspectives on it and just how some things can't be like that was,
Mad.
yeah. I think we'll leave it there. We
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit, you know,
a bit taken back.
bit shook.
I'm still thinking about the barrel one. That's
Yeah,
what's
that was
sticking with me.
horrible.
Mummifying her in the barrel.
No.
That really stuck with me.
Good thing they've been solved, really. That's
Yeah,
it.
that's the way you could really close it. So as always, we have been Unstable TV, and you have been the beautiful people of YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us today.
And don't forget to drop a comment below to let us know how you found this video. And if you'd like us to do more content like this.
Let us know in the comments section below. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.